So hi everybody and welcome to today's webinar, Elevating Your UC Experience, How to Improve Productivity and Meet Business KPIs.
My name is Josh Starkey. I am the Manager of Technical Sales for the US channels here at Neat. And Neat is a Norwegian video technology company where we make purpose-built devices that are intended to make video conferencing more approachable, intuitive, and just all around easy to use, all while maintaining a high quality of audio and video.
Hi, my name's George Scott. I'm the Director of Operations here at Utelogy. Utelogy is a device monitoring and management solution, with one of the key things being completely device and manufacturer agnostic. Really, our mantra is that anything that sits on the network that has an API, we have the ability to both control and also pull back, importantly, monitoring and management data from, so that users who are using our platform can make sure that they see the overall health of their estate. And if they do see something, with an alert or looking a bit negative, we can essentially remediate those problems or implement things like self-healing, where the system will remediate it as soon as it's detected.
So let's start at the very beginning of the meeting experience. So much of what happens for day two to a success is defined by choices that are made on day one, whether it's the design, the AV hardware, or even the automation strategy. So Josh and George, how do you both think about foundations of a great user experience?
So that's where, again, we really start with the design of our products, and they're all built to make that great experience for the user. And so we build purpose-built devices or appliances. So we include the camera, the microphones, the speakers, as well as the compute. And really, we have kind of three different areas. So, at first is the initial setup process. So as soon as you open up a Neat device and you start unboxing it, that's really where it all begins. That is intended to be intuitive and just approachable. But then in the meeting is really where, we like to think about things like individual auto framing or neat symmetry. So hopefully our users can enjoy a hands-off approach that is still, very natural feeling. And then of course, outside the meeting is incredibly important, because that's where the managing and maintaining the devices and keeping everybody happy and up and running. And that's where, we have awesome partners like Utelogy that can, fully complement this awesome experience.
From my perspective, or Utelogy's perspective, as Nicole mentioned, designing for not only day one success, which is probably more product-led, day two success is kind of led by, to me specifically, again, it's what you've chosen to put into your meeting room, and also how manageable and how much monitoring capability that device has. For example, if we chose something like a Neat bar where we have great APIs and great, monitoring and management capability over that device, we're going to see much better day two success than maybe choosing another product that has lower capabilities. You might find yourself with lower service calls, fewer truck rolls, however you term that or measure those pieces of success, but making sure that what we've chosen sets us up for the future so that we know whatever we've chosen is supportable. Just to add more to that, it's something we can do where if we have a device that has a great API, we also have the ability to implement two things. Self-healing you spoke about, and I mentioned briefly earlier, is where when Utelogy can detect a problem on a device and we know what that problem is and what the fix is, we can essentially implement that without any human intervention. So essentially, reducing the number of service calls, but critically, we can also track how often that's happened. So not only are you still fixing the problem without any human intervention, and typically, within 5 seconds, let's say as an example, you're also being able to report that back to the client to say, with the products we've chosen or designed, or the products we've chosen ourselves, we've been able to implement some of these things like self-healing where, whether that's combinations of multiple devices, things like managed PDUs or displays, as well as obviously the camera bar giving us some data, we can essentially implement all of those. The second piece to that is around the automation scripts. So, in terms of great UX, we think about a few things. There's going to be elements of you want to walk into a room and everything's ready for you. So that's, the screen switched on, I don't know, the speakers are set to the right volume. With the combination of Neat and Utelogy, we can essentially do all of those things for you. So pulling data from multiple sources and essentially preparing the room for use, as well as setting volumes to known levels so we know that the meeting room experience is kind of a working state every single day.
And we love that Neat pushes past traditional AV and incorporates all of this information and all of these sensors. So you did touch a little bit on occupancy and people counting, but can you go a little bit deeper on why this is important and what information you're actually capturing to leverage room utilization?
Like I said, we have the environmental sensors that are fairly, one-trick ponies. They may be able to pull different data and pass that along. But we also use some of those standard components for things. So for instance, our cameras are also used for people counting. So the same object recognition that we use to provide the individual auto framing experience, we're able to identify those participants and then have that information available to pass on to our users. We also use like the standard microphones for things like occupancy and vacancy sensing. So we have ultrasonic emitters in our devices that none of us can hear because we can't hear those frequencies, but we can sense them with those microphones and determine changes within them that ultimately tell us whether the space is occupied or if it's vacant. And then again, we can hand all that data off to Utelogy. It does flow through our Pulse cloud, so it's going to leave, the device level and go up to our Pulse cloud. But then from there, that's where we start to hand it off via the API over to Utelogy to really provide that value to the users so they can, make better informed decisions around their facilities, real estate investments, and just, know how their investment is actually being utilized.
Yeah, and I think just to cover that from the Utelogy side, I mean, so all of that data that's coming out of the bar itself or the Neat product is actually going, as you said, through Pulse, but then ultimately flowing into Utelogy. And from Utelogy, we do a few things. We store that historically, so we can do things like give you historical views as to what's been happening with your estate, both in terms of occupancy as well as environmental. But critically, we can also then pull some metrics around, usage of your space. So how often it's used, what's the peak occupancy, what's the average occupancy, those kind of pieces of data essentially are available in our system. So you can see, occupancy versus utilization of that meeting room. But just before I carry on, I'll come back to the environmental sensors. And I think that's also something that's critical. And I think it's something we're seeing a lot more from the modern workplace, where not only does the equipment need to be good, but the actual environment needs to be good. So having those sensors built into the bar means that we can, look at them historically, see what's happening, but we can also alert when they get to a threshold that's not suitable for a good workplace. And essentially, we can also, through Utelogy, send those to the relevant teams. So, for example, an AV technician probably doesn't want to receive a CO2 level alert, but that's something a facilities or a HR team may want to receive so that they can look to see how many times that happens, what's causing those effects. Are people closing doors and windows, turning off AC, so they can actually make the changes to make that workplace better. And then just to finish off on the occupancy, I talked about that obviously we can store that historically and report on that. Another key benefit of pulling that data into a tool set like Utelogy is that you can also combine that with data from other sources. So for example, if we combine that with things like Microsoft Teams or Zoom, which I think are going to be the main usage of those bars that you sell, Josh, we can actually also do things like ghosted meeting reports and even do things like cancel bookings when people haven't shown up. So again, if we detect a room has been booked and it may be on a recurring booking, which I think is something that we all see common in the market, someone's booked a space every Monday morning for the next 6 months, We can detect when they haven't shown up to that space. We can notify them and say, just so you know, your meeting, you have a meeting that you haven't shown up to. We can then also cancel that meeting or report on it, depending on the appetite of the client. So we can essentially say, no one's shown up for 15 minutes, let's clear that booking. So essentially open that space back up so it can be used by other team members who are in the building and need a meeting when we potentially can't find one.
That's really interesting in the way that we're able to capture both real time and report on historical metrics, especially when we're talking about reclaiming space. It is a really great segue to talk about our next topic. Another really big and major industry pain point that we've been seeing come up a lot recently is sustainability and understanding just technology usage and energy savings. So meeting room technology can play a major component in this. Josh, are you able to talk a little bit more about Neat Pulse and some of the real-time data capturing through your API to support this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, we like to over-engineer things and then kind of enable it through software releases. And so, obviously we saw the value in data day one when our team was designing the devices. But historically, or really without friends like Utelogy, a lot of that data is real time. And so you might be able to see it on the Neat Pad or a Neat board, but it's also available kind of in real time in Neat Pulse. So Neat Pulse is really our full monitoring and management portal, but it lacks the historical data that George was talking about. So unless you have a team of people standing there or sitting there staring at a web page and waiting for it to hit a certain level, it's not super valuable. You can in real time look through the rooms and see the differences and stuff like that. But again, the real value comes with being able to digest that, parse all that information, and then put it together in a usable form. And again, kind of make those informed business decisions. If you're a facilities manager, being able to not just say, hey, we need more space provision for conference rooms. If you can go in and say, hey, we're historically having 3 people meeting in our large conference rooms and our small conference rooms are fully booked up. I think we need to plan a little bit better and build out less large and more small. Those are the things that that data ultimately is really valuable for.
With that data, I mean, with the data being real time, it gives us lots of powers and capabilities. So, for example, we're constantly getting that data. Is the room occupied or not? Something that we can do is, I spoke about it earlier, is sort of around the automation. So to be able to do things like when somebody leaves the room, we can essentially turn that equipment off, whether that's just the display, which I know the Neat Bar can do already through HDMI CEC, or whether that's all of the equipment in the room. Again, if the Neat Bar sat in a complex space with audio equipment or extra displays or even LED walls, things like that, we can essentially go in and turn that system off when the system in that real-time data tells us that it's unoccupied.
So everything that we've talked about so far is really, really exciting, whether it's on the data side or what we're able to do on the hardware side. But all of this really only matters if there's security underlayer involved. So Josh, could you talk a little bit more about how Neat protects its device data and how encryption is handled, especially in the cloud?
We kind of have 3 pillars in our secure approach with Neat Pulse. So it starts with encryption, and that includes data encryption as it leaves the local area network and goes up to the Azure cloud. So that's all encrypted using HTTPS with TLS. And then when it's at rest, storing that information in Azure, it uses AES 256-bit encryption. So, we're using industry standard encryption for everything. We support Microsoft B2C and SSO. So, and we don't store any sort of user passwords or anything like that. We additionally use secure secret key for authentication once those devices are enrolled, including the API access. We also use compliance in operations. So, everything is processed in customer assigned Azure regions. And so we meet requirements like GDPR and CCPA. So we have, third-party pen testing regularly, automated security scanning, all that good stuff that our CISO loves. And then we also have auditing. So customers have access to audit logs within Pulse. They can see device changes, both at the device level or things that are implemented or, change within Neat Pulse itself. And then, role-based access control as well. So we've got owner and admin roles that you can assign to different regions. So we take security and privacy very seriously, and it's not super exciting, but it's better than having a breach or getting that data out into the wrong hands.
Yeah, it's very, very important. And I know that we all support organizations of all different shapes and sizes, but some have stricter requirements than others, which we still need to support. So George, how does Utelogy support both cloud to cloud and on-network data collectors, especially if we can't expose devices to the internet?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Utelogy has a standard design of a hybrid on-prem cloud solution. And the reason is exactly that, is for security. So we have a data collector that we install on the customer's network. That device is really there for those devices that probably either don't have the capabilities or are not secure enough to talk to the internet by themselves. We're not talking about specifically camera bars here, but this is going to be probably the more simple devices, speakers, microphones, even things like managed PDUs. Those devices will not have an advanced cloud portal or a cloud stance like Neat does. But essentially, we have the ability to sit that data collector on site, communicate across the network to those devices, pull it back to our data collector we call uServer, package it securely, and then send it up to our cloud for cloud viewing in our portal, which is uManage, which I'm going to be showing you very shortly. So what we're looking at here, this is uManage, as I mentioned. This is our cloud portal. Firstly, just to finish off on the security piece, it is authenticated through single sign-on or multi-factor authentication, depending on the preference. But again, you log into the platform. The first page you're going to come to is going to be our dashboards. And this is really where you can see that high-level overview of the systems. Probably almost slightly more important is not just what's going wrong right now, but what has been going wrong. So again, we can look back historically and see trends and pull up analysis to see, what are the common alerts that we get. We can also pull up more detailed alerting. Again, things like what have been my most common alerts or how many alerts have I had this year, this month, this week. This essentially is where we can see a list of our system. So again, you can see the list of the rooms that we have. We can see currently if they're in use, i.e. are they system on or off for a user in that space actually using it. One of the other key parts that we've spoken about during the webinar is going to be around automation. So again, to show you this is a part of our platform that we call uAutomate, where essentially we can do a series of things. Again, it's either actions on a schedule, we can do power saving, so turning devices on in the morning and off at night, as well as doing sort of what we would call an active room check. So instead of having to send a user to that space every single day, potentially depending on the organization, Utelogy can do things like turn the system on in the middle of the night. We do things like, check that the system switched on successfully, that we're seeing input from, say, the Neat bar to the display, as well as doing things like playing sound from the speaker, listening on the microphone, making sure that we're getting everything that we expect to get from that system and it is working every day.
Thank you both so much. This was a fantastic webinar. Thank you for all of your insights. And Georgia, that was a fantastic demo. Thank you everybody for being here today, and we'll talk to you next time.